Hello, everybody. Welcome. Let's look at the markets. Tesla stock is down 2% today. Some commotion around um, yesterday's, Trump rally and Elon's salute. Whether that was a Nazi salute or what, we don't know. But Tesla stock is down 2% after having run up substantially in the last couple of weeks here. Recovered quite a bit from it was up to like 480s, and then it went down about 20% to less than 400, and now it's at 420. So that's about a 10% bounce. So it's still pretty normal, very volatile stock. I wouldn't make too much of today's move. Give me 1 second, please. All right. Overall stock markets are up. Dow Jones up 1%, Nasdaq up 0.7%, led by Nvidia and Google. All right. Let's bring in ACDC, see what he has to say. Apple down 4% today. Travel services down 5%. That's really interesting. Let's take a closer look at that. Let me know how audio is on YouTube, please. Test, 1, 2. Test. All right. Let's look at bookings. There might be some sort of a earnings announcement here that's booking holdings. Down 5%, Airbnb down 2%, but I'm not sure why. That's a big move. I don't see in the news. Interesting. ACDC, how are you?
I'm good, Yaman. How are you?
Good. You're on the move.
You mean as if like I'm in the car?
Yeah, are you?
I am, yeah. I'm having a fun trip in which started this morning at minus 10 degrees and right now it's 1 degree. So I was dropping my son back off to college. So it's a 2 hour trip. I'm sorry, 3 hour trip from Chicago to Iowa City.
Well, that's awesome, man. Congratulations to you. And your son's just starting? What year is he in?
He's a freshman. So yeah, it's his first year. And guess what he's studying? He's studying accounting.
Oh, really? All right. Well, that's really cool. How did he get into that? Is the kind of influence from you a little bit?
Yeah, so his strengths were, in math particularly, and you really need to have a kind of like a talk with these kids these days. As if I left it on to him, he would have been trying to study to become a sports broadcaster, right? So I'm like, let's sit down, let's talk about this a little bit, okay? Let's talk about something that's actually going to make you money. So we kind of discovered his strength, and then I focus on something that's kind of in need, especially looking at the accounting sector. There's a lot of jobs that are needed, a lot of that need to be filled because there's a lot of kids in the recent times who have shied away from the accounting career because I think you did it a long time ago when it wasn't 4+1, but now it's 4+1. Kids don't want to wait that long to get their accounting or like a CPA. So a lot of kids shy away from it. So, that's kind of what he chose. But now, I mean, I'm in a dilemma because AI is literally changing everything. And how will it look like 3 years from now? I don't know. So I'm really trying to encourage him to do something alongside with accounting and focus on um, information technology, business analytics, and incorporate AI because I think no matter what you're doing, you're going to need that in your profession going forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, congratulations to you and good luck to him. He's always welcome to come up here and maybe tell us about Tesla's accounting. All right, let's look at, man, I'm really curious about this Booking stock down 5% today. Um, it's been weak in the last week, it looks like. In the last week, Booking has been down when the markets have been surging. And in the last month, Booking stock, this is Booking Holdings, a travel services company, down 9% in the last month. In the last 3 months, travel services have done well. So this is a weakness that started about a month ago in the stock, it seems. Yeah. And so it's more of a company specific underperformance as opposed to the sector. So Airbnb is flat. Um, Royal Caribbean is up 1% in the last month. If you look at last week, Booking is down, Royal Caribbean is up 8%, Airbnb up 3%. So it's a company specific situation. If I look at the fundamentals of the company, $155 billion company with $5 billion of income, $23 billion of revenue, PE ratio of 32, forward PE of 22, PEG ratio of 2. So it seems reasonably priced. Um, yeah, this is a really, really interesting one. I'm going to look into this a little bit more. Booking Holdings. I suspect they own a bunch of these websites. Let's see what they own. The one part of the economy that hasn't yet weakened is travel, airline travel, um, um, cruise services. So Booking is one company that I should probably add to my macroeconomic analysis. Let's see, profile. Online and traditional travel and restaurant reservations and related services in the US, Netherlands, and internationally. The company operates Booking.com, which offers online accommodation services, and Priceline, which provides online travel reservation services, as well as consumers, hotel, flight activity, rental car reservation, vacation packages, cruises, and hotel distribution services. Also operates Agoda, Kayak, Open Table, and rental cars. The company was formerly known as Priceline Group. Interesting. All right, let me take a real quick look. Notes here. ACDC. In the meantime, what do you think about Tesla stock dropping today?
I mean, relative to the market, I mean, it's not really a significant drop for the stock itself. Like I told you, I've been on the road, so I didn't really see any specific headline come through, but I'm thinking this is really, uncertainty about the EV credit, and then maybe a little bit hesitancy with the whole controversy on Elon. That's all I can really put to it.
Yeah, there are people out there who say EV tax credit going away is not going to be negative. It's going to be positive for Tesla. I think maybe in the very much longer term, possibly, but I don't see how that's possible in the near term. I mean, Tesla's already struggling with Q1 sales here. So, I mean, I guess we don't really have any news around when that's going to go away. I think some people expect it to go away by the end of this year. What do you think?
I I think it will go away, and I mean it does need a vote, right? Because it was part of the bill, so it's going to have to go through a vote. But I think that's something more than likely they'll probably make it for the calendar year since it's well, actually not because it's not really related on your taxes. So you're getting an actual credit. It's actually at all quite a sale rebate now, so they could make it even sooner. But I think that it does go away because he's not. I mean, that's if he keeps the EV credit, that's as blatant of you know violation of what he's doing in terms of getting rid of all the green energy, everything, right? So it'll stick out like a sore thumb. I don't think he's going to take that risk for it, and I do agree that for a considerable amount of time, it's going to be a drag because if you look at the sales, 3 and Ys are what are holding up all the sales, and most of the people who are buying those 3s and Ys are buying it because of the credit. It definitely makes a big deal when you can take $7,500 off of it right off the top.
Yeah, it does. It does make a big deal. By the way, Ford Lightning is supposedly going away. So Ford Lightning may not be around for much longer because I guess they had a tough time making it profitable. That makes sense. And Rivian stock is down quite a bit today too. Rivian stock is down 7% after going up about $15 per share a couple of days ago. Yeah, that's wild. Extremely volatile stock, you know. They have earnings coming up. Maybe they produce some gross margin. Maybe the stock goes up on that. Who knows? But we'll see. What do you think about Elon's gesture at the event? How do you think about those things?
So I personally think that it was an innocent gesture, and in nowhere and in no by no means is he trying to symbolize anything to do with anything Nazism. But a lot of people have definitely taken it the wrong way. And I don't mean like just the extreme left side itself. There's a much larger portion who personally took it the wrong way and then were swayed by the media to look at it the wrong way. But I mean, a lot of people, I'm seeing people in my own friend circle who are kind of like in middle ground and they are not willing to listen that this was something that he, just inadvertently did. They very much think that it was intentional and he knew exactly what he was doing. So it's pretty serious. Even though I think personally that it was completely out of innocence, the guy actually said, "My heart goes out to you," and he did it twice. But yeah, it's being taken really. It hasn't been taken well at all, and I think it definitely is having an impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen two different, I've seen mixed reactions to it outside of the X bubble in my personal life. Um, Oracle is up more than 5% today. All chip makers are up. Micron is up 4%. Nvidia is up more than 2%. Intel up 3%. Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's kind of wild how uniformly the chip makers are going up today. Let's see. Yeah, the only weakness is in Tesla. Apple is down 4%, and a couple of travel services companies. And oil stocks are down too. Oil price side came down today quite a bit. What do you think of Apple? Do you think would you be a buyer of Apple at some point if this recent weakness continues?
Not really. I started looking at it last week itself, but I just couldn't find a compelling reason to buy it. I mean, I guess it could be a safe investment here, but at the same time, I don't see any catalysts that could really boost, any growth for the company. I mean, it would make sense for them to maybe acquire someone to spur some growth. But given the high valuations of anything that's good out there to be acquired, and then also that just being completely against Apple's own culture, I don't see that happening. So I just can't see a catalyst. So it's more like a defensive stock, but I don't see any growth in it.
Yeah. I mean, investing in Apple at this point is kind of like investing in cash, honestly. Majority of the balance sheet is cash. Not much predictable, not much variance in their sales. Kind of like cash and bonds, high grade corporate bond type of investment, I guess. Um, you know, quite a few Wall Street analysts came out in the last few days talking about how AI will spur up a lot of demand for the iPhone, spur up this major upgrade cycle for the iPhone. But the stock just getting plunged. I mean, just getting pummeled. Down 4% in this market. In the last week, it's down about 6%. That is kind of crazy for this company. Down 14% in the last month. It's down 15% since December 20, since Christmas. Down 15%. Kind of wild. It's been a bad year for Apple. Down 10% so far this year. Crazy. Um, Warren Buffett sold most of his sales and his shares. But
I was going to say that it's bad when even Warren Buffett doesn't see growth in in the company.
yeah, I mean, what kind of competition do they face at this point? Like I think in the future, computing platform will move to brain implants and stuff, but that's still 5-10 years away. So um, I don't know what kind of competition markets are seeing for Apple. It's almost gotten to the point where if you're not a good AI company, if the markets aren't convinced that you have potential in AI, your stock just sells off.
Exactly. So right now, in terms of the market multiples, all the high multiples are being only given to anything related with AI, right? Whether it merits it or not, but that's exactly what everybody's focused on, and that's exactly what you want to hear. Companies can drop anything on AI and it still swings stock prices even till now, even though it will be something very small, incremental inefficiency in the back office or in their production line or something. But if you say AI and you're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. Let's look at Bitcoin. I mean, crypto has become a major asset class at this point. Has quite a bit of weighting in a lot of portfolios. $106,000 per Bitcoin. I think it tapped out mid-December at around 108,000. So it's kind of near all-time highs. Did you buy Trump coin?
That, oh my God.
You
So,
missed out. Did you miss out? Wow.
yeah, no, I didn't touch it. And that was like the biggest, it, I felt very uneasy with that whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a big Trump supporter, and I don't know who it was. I think it was Eric Trump, utilizing that moment to strike a deal, help some of his friends. But it was a very wrong message to send to your core base and also to any serious conversation that you really want to have about crypto as an industry being, a main coming into the mainstream, into the government also. Okay. So it was, and then to top it off, then they come out with a Melania coin the next day. So I don't even know what they're trading at. Last I knew, I think Trump was down to like 35, 40. Melania was up by like 10, 15. So I don't get it.
I mean, there's no way this happened without Trump knowing, right? Obviously, he has approval on it. And, people made billions of dollars, I guess, if they cashed out.
I think it has Trump's approval on it, but I don't think it is. It has this in-depth, you know, um, analysis on it, or him looking into it and seeing exactly what it is. I mean, he's busy with the inauguration and all the craziness going all around it, and Eric Trump comes in like that. You just got to repost this, okay? That's all we need, okay? Just repost this. It's going to be great. We're making a coin in your name, and he's like, "Oh, in my name, great, sounds good." But I don't think he evaluated the message that it really sends out. Apart from the hardcore crypto industry, the traders, not too many people were happy about it. And especially the left, it gives them another excuse to point that out as a grift, point that out as a method of enriching one's own family and everything. So it sent the wrong message out in so many ways. And it just takes away from the conversation about it. And actually, it detracts from Bitcoin, too.
It does. It does indeed. I mean, I've seen a lot of Bitcoiners not liking the situation. I mean, I guess we'll see where it goes, but interesting times we're living for sure. Are you a buyer of Tesla here after this pullback today?
No, definitely not. Actually, I just posted my experience with cold weather driving this morning, and I'm actually very motivated to get a hybrid as my next car.
No way. Are you serious?
I am very, very serious. It's a great car for local driving. I love driving it. And I love the FSD for long distance. Like, I can talk to you right now, and mostly be hands free, even though I have to keep looking straight. But just to give you a perspective, okay, it was -10 this morning in Chicago with a wind chill of -15. So it was a really cold day, and we don't see cold days like this too often, right? But it was one of those things where I had to make the trip, had to get my son to college by a specific time so he could get to his first class and everything. Needless to say, he missed his first class. Um, the trip is 200 miles. In the summer, I used to be able to make that trip straight without one charge because my Model Y Performance has a 280 EPA, so highway is about 220, 200, 210 it could cover. This morning, it needed two stops, which meant an extra 50 minutes added to a 2-hour drive just to be able to get you there.
That's wild. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. A 200-mile trip and you needed two stops. I mean, what level of battery did you just start the trip?
I started with 100%. So I preconditioned the car in my garage, okay, which is so it's not sitting out in the cold. It was charged up to 100% and preconditioned, but this kind of cold temperature, the battery could still never get to an ideal temperature. The first supercharger that I got to was within an hour, and the maximum charge it took was like around 90 kilowatt because it wasn't even warm up enough to take anywhere 150, 250 kilowatt charge. So the charge took longer. And then the second charge that I got to, it actually got up to 150, but that was the max because, I mean, it really, really struggles with such extreme temperatures.
Yeah, that's not good at all. What year is their car? 20. Is the Model Y what year? 23.
Model Y hardware for late 23.
Yeah. So basically as good as it gets. Okay.
Right. So that's the other thing. Okay. So when I look at my stats, it tells me that my battery's already gone through a 9% degradation. So that's significant. So that means, I don't know, in 2, 3 years, I'm not going to be able to make that trip without a stop even in the summer. And then get another couple of years, maybe I'll need two stops on a regular basis, you know? So that's the other thing that I don't like about it. Because with a gas car, your engine's never degrading, right? I mean, yeah, you got to get it serviced and stuff. But if you look at on a Tesla, yes, the software is improving, it's upgrading. That's great. But your hardware, by which I mean the battery itself, is degrading. You're losing range every year. So it's tough. Maybe if I can have another car for long road trips and just keep this for local driving, that would be the solution. But it's definitely not ideal for road tripping.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine the Tesla owners that don't have the heat pump or have older batteries, obviously. But these are unusual situations, obviously, right? You're kind of going through extreme weather, in a long trip in extreme weather. So yeah, I mean, this is why hybrids are outgrowing EVs right now. BYD came out with some sort of let me see, from 10% to 18%, 15% to 80% takes about 10 minutes to charge. How long does it take for you?
So, like I said, the two charging trips, of course, once again, because it was taking longer today with the cold weather, they accounted for like 50 minutes. Usually in the summer, I can just top it off with a quick charge of like 10, 15 minutes and then be on my way again. But I mean, the charging time and then the cold weather. And that also, so same thing with Baidu. I mean, I would love to know exactly what temperature they're doing it in. And I know what you're saying that this isn't.
No, this is BYD, $41,000 BYD Han. Charges from 16% to 80% in 10 minutes at negative 22 Fahrenheit.
I would buy that. I would sacrifice FSD and I
Well,
would
you
buy
can't.
that.
You can't buy that, right? You can't buy that because it's not in the US. Trump, your boy won't let you buy it.
Well, I got to talk to my boy because that's exactly what you need if you want mass adoption for EVs. I mean, my situation was still somewhat urgent, but it could be worked around, right? Imagine people for whom it's their only car and it's their mean of transportation, and then also people who don't have the luxury of home charging and or garage parking. It just becomes that much tougher. So something like this is definitely what you need if you want EVs to go mainstream.
Yeah. Well, BYD is, outselling most automakers in the world now. I think it's the top five and close to being a top four automaker global. So, yeah, hybrids, EVs, the world is moving in the right direction. Do you want to talk some NVIDIA?
Sure, why don't you start? Give me a minute. I'm about to plug in.
Again?
Yeah,
Well,
I gotta do.
are you going on V3 chargers or V2? What's going on here?
These are all V3 chargers, and boy, usually this. So this is from Chicago to Iowa. Okay, not too many people have EVs around here. So when I come to these chargers, they are literally empty always. Okay. And right now, as I pulled in, half the chargers have been taken because everybody is suffering the same thing with the need to charge.
Right. Wes, what do you make of this? As a Tesla investor, does this concern you that ACDC is having to charge his vehicle twice on a 200-mile road trip to drop his son off? And because he had to charge for the second time, his son missed the first class of his freshman year.
Yeah, it sounds like not ideal. That's too bad. I think when you're this is towing or not towing.
ACDC, are you towing or not? I don't think he's towing anything.
No, I'm not towing anything. It's just me and my son, and now it's just me myself. But just for context, it was -10 this morning, and we are at 1 degree right now. So it is extreme cold, and I was kind of prepared for it, but I wasn't prepared for this.
Yeah, what's your 100% range?
277.
Yikes, that's what vehicle is this again?
It's a Model Y Performance.
Gotcha. You have the performance tires on it, or do you have snow tires?
No, I still have the all-season tires.
Oh, gotcha. So with all seasons in this temperature, you're getting less than 200 miles of range?
Yes, the range in this temperature has dropped to about 110 on highway.
What speed is your average on the highway?
75.
I mean, this is why the hybrids are outgrowing EVs around the world. Number one reason. Wes, do you ever run into situations like this? I can't hear. Wes, are you on mute?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? My bad.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I had folks over to the house and they asked me that same question. And it was when I took the family to Crater Lake in Oregon. And there was only one destination charger that was working there. And we had to wait for somebody to leave. And that was difficult. But now I've noticed when I looked it up on Google Maps, there's 3 superchargers that basically surround Crater Lake now. So not a problem. And it seems like, there's less and less places that are hard to reach or hard to get to and come back from. It's the same with Glacier National Park. There was one supercharger that had a permit filed for over 8 years in Kalispell, Montana, and that one is now active. And so that has reduced or eliminated my last difficult spot for where I go to and drive to on a semi-annual type basis. But yeah, having less than 200 miles of range in given environmental conditions is bad. Like that's something that I don't think is acceptable. So yeah, that worries me as a Tesla investor.
And BY, so as I heard on Autoline, their daily updates, BYD $41,000 Han charges from 16% to 80% in 10 minutes at -22 Fahrenheit. So I think this is where vertical integration battery production maybe is a little helpful. And in other news, CATL announced that they're going to build a battery factory in Europe with one of the major automakers, but they didn't announce which automaker. So, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right. Wes, are you adding to your Tesla holding here?
What's interesting is that I actually, because I was showing a friend how to do options, I bought some Tesla options this morning. So I may actually be adding to my position. I did some research into it, and I felt like that was a good play for me.
Would you mind sharing the strike price and expiration date?
Yeah, sure. So it's February 14th. The strike is 500. And I bought, just so you know, I bought 5 call options. There you go. That was my trade.
Okay, great. Well, good luck. And what's your position now on NVIDIA? Just kind of still holding, or are you shorting, or are you selling?
No, I'm holding. Continue to hold. A lot
Yeah.
of the information that just came out from DeepSeek is really interesting. Test time training is yet another scaling factor, which is super cool.
Okay. ACDC.
Just had a quick question for Wes. Wes, I know you posted some stuff about some FSD when you were in China, and particularly about something that you saw that was even better than FSD. Do you want to comment on that? And also, do you think that we will be rolling out unsupervised FSD by the end of the year, and also robo taxis by the end of the year? Especially given that there were some pictures. I think there was one picture spotted of a cybercab with actually a steering wheel on it. So, I mean, on that speculation itself.
Yeah, so I'll be traveling to China in April, most likely, uh, and testing out all the leading uh, rideshare services and self-driving vehicles that are available with the latest software. So there's a company that's helping me organize all of this, so it should be exciting. And I'm hopefully able to tour at least one production facility. So I'm hoping to see that as well, but I'm not sure if that will happen. Um, so I feel like some of the stuff that I've seen from some reviewers looks like there's FSD-like capabilities from a few systems. Presently, the Huawei system looks like it's FSD similar. I can't tell you exactly, but it looks similar. It looks similar to V13. That's what I've seen so far. But I really want to see this firsthand, and I'm willing to spend the money to make that happen. And then as far as unsupervised this year, I think we'll definitely see a beta of unsupervised in a couple cities, namely Austin in the Bay Area. The cybercab thing with a steering wheel, it didn't look like a steering wheel to me. It looks like a shadow. And it looks like from the shadow of the vehicle, it looks like whatever it is something's in the window of the driver's side. So that's what it looked like to me. So I'm still confident that what's happening at Giga Texas is a test of unsupervised, and they're just trying to get miles. I'd love to see more vehicles, however, though, being tested. I think that would be a good indicator that they're scaling up. So I'm hopeful that that will happen soon. I'm looking forward to the earnings call because I'm feeling like we're going to hear some good information about more specific dates for rollout. So there you go.
Thanks. I'm sorry I got that confused because I know you had said that you were headed to China. I must have got somebody else's post. Maybe it was Kyle Connor's post on something about an FSD in China or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Kyle did. Yeah, no worries. Kyle did. He is over there right now, and he's driving different vehicles, which is essentially the same thing that I want to do. But he's getting some interesting results, and I'm looking forward. He posted about having a full video of an FSD V13-like experience, so I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Before I go to Jimmy, Wes, would you please expand on what you mean by test time compute is yet another area for NVIDIA to increase NVIDIA's demand for NVIDIA's GPU?
Yeah, sure. So we know about the pre-training scaling law, and we also know about how more training material in pre-training helps, scale inference, and the ability for the trained model to do accurate predictions. What we haven't heard a lot of since actually it really started in earnest at the kind of the latest couple months of NVIDIA conferences and CES is a kind of a new scaling law that OpenAI essentially introduced, but now has been copied by a company called DeepSeek and a few others, but DeepSeek has really open sourced it. So now individuals or folks with only like 10 grand or something can train a very, very competent frontier model. So test time training, as opposed to test time compute, test time training is about taking the output of a given model and like pre-prompting it kind of in series and OpenAI refers to this as thinking or reasoning, but it's kind of these pre-prompting ways for it to help it think for longer. And this is scaling really well. So you're able to achieve these kind of really great results, these frontier level or benchmark leading results across multiple benchmarks for fractions of the cost of larger models. So it's interesting. Not only are we progressing now with larger pre-trained models, but we're progressing with smaller kind of post-trained or test time training models. So that's what I'm referring to. And when we talk about how this affects NVIDIA, is that it allows for companies to increase their inference level compute because these models are scaling really well at inference time, test time. And that allows NVIDIA to sell even more inference compute in the short term. And so the demand for that, I think, is going to go through the roof over the next 12 months as companies start to scale even more on inference or test time. There you go.
Does this apply to Tesla FSD, or the urgency of decisions at inference time for FSD is just so high that you can't really use
Yeah,
it?
yeah. No. I think it could apply. I'm not saying it will, but it could, because they could do a similar approach to trying to figure out what to do in certain circumstances. Like a canonical example would be, when you see hesitancy in the 12.6 model, you're seeing that because it technically isn't confident enough to make a nice smooth maneuver in that situation. What it could do is it could think about it for a few more frames, during the control cycle of the inference model, and just run it through, 2 or 3 more times and go, okay, I think I have a much higher confidence now that I've looked at this a couple times inside of that, situational context. And the output is just smooth behavior. And you're doing that with the same amount of compute and memory because your control loop is, fast enough so that you can do it multiple times. So they could do that. And that could extend the life of hardware 3, to involve kind of like an F13, V13 like behavior sooner, rather than just doing other methods to scale the model to fit inside of, one control loop. They could do potentially multiple iterations of control loops to get a smoother driving behavior. There you go.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. We just want to talk about more on FSD. Is that the direction?
Yeah, FSD, AI, NVIDIA, type of
Sure.
topics.
And Intel, right? A little bit of
No.
Intel?
Nope.
No Intel. Okay. Well, regarding this, I mean, from my experience, the Chinese version of FSD on their BYD, I would say that it doesn't really work all that well, mostly because of the lack of training data. Obviously, it works well in the big cities, but China is a very big place, and once you get out of the big cities, it doesn't work very well. In Red Note or Red Book, Honghuaishao, which is like Chinese version of TikTok, really. There are so many videos almost every day of one of the Wuling, Wuling, the Chinese car company, hitting another car with their ridiculous little AI thing. And when it does, people really wonder. I mean, there was an incident 3 days ago, someone was killed. The Wuling got off the lane and killed a biker because in China, there's still a lot of second tier, third tier cities where a lot of people are riding bikes or electric scooters. So it's like, you don't really see that often in the US, but there's like 2 lanes, right? So like car lanes and then the bike lanes for both motorbikes, electric motorbike scooters, mopeds, and regular bicycles. And so there's a lot more danger for. Okay.
Yeah, please make your points quickly. So you're saying FSD isn't going to scale in China because there's a lot more danger, there's a lot more pets, etc. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I mean, it could, but the Chinese versions aren't really scaling all that well.
Okay.
People seem to have an issue with the lanes. They're not. It's not
Well,
that clear in
we'll
some
see
cities.
what Wes reports back after his trip. Wes, when are you coming back from your
What city
trip?
are you going to?
I should be back early May.
But what cities are you going to though?
Mainly Beijing, Shenzhen, and Suzhou.
Well, those are like just the big cities. I mean, once you get outside of the first tier cities, things change quite a lot.
So part of what I'm doing, I'm going to be driving between some big cities. So a lot of rural driving.
So, are you driving between Beijing and Shenzhen? Is that correct?
I believe so, but the route is indeterminate at this point. I'm waiting for final, kind of route, because I want to hit a lot of smaller areas as well. I'm hoping to do a bit of tourism, and that coincides really well with testing these smaller roads because I agree with you. I want to see how it does well in a more general sense.
Jimmy, going back to NVIDIA, Wes says demand for NVIDIA's GPUs will continue to outpace supply growth for years to come until after we reach AGI. Do you have thoughts on NVIDIA stock?
Well, clearly, Nvidia stock is going to go to the moon again, and it's going to be worth double of what it is right now. The facts are there's so few competitors to Nvidia that can really get the scale. I mean, I was watching his little speech about where he basically argued where there are competitors to Nvidia, the cost of replacing Nvidia GPUs into a data center, even if they were to give it out for free, their competitors, is not worth considering what they pay Nvidia because the GPUs are so much better for Nvidia. And that was an interesting argument. I wonder what other people think about that. So that, if AMD started giving out their GPUs for free, it would still be more costly and less performance enhancing than just keeping the NVIDIA GPUs that they have to pay a lot of money for.
Well, I mean, I'm short NVIDIA. I'm betting against the company at this point. The one
What's
thing
your strike price?
number one, I haven't disclosed how I'm shorting the company. Number one is this statement is coming from NVIDIA management. We've seen statements to the opposite from their customer, Microsoft, that AMD is better compete for the money. And then secondly, just because NVIDIA has the lead on, but secondly, the statements you're talking about is like from a year or 2 years ago. It's not even a recent statement on the earnings call. I remember that statement. And third, I think if the demand growth slows down, it doesn't matter if NVIDIA's chips are better than the competition's chips. If the overall demand is slowing down, like Microsoft, I think is having a bit of a problem in terms of increasing their spend for AI infrastructure build out. So those are the three things I would point out.
But even if Apple and Google and others just continue buying NVIDIA chips, isn't that more than enough to outstrip supply for the next few years?
Yeah, I don't know. If they continue to buy, is different from are they going to continue to increase their spend at the same rate?
Well, they're trying to improve their AIs, right? So, I mean, Siri is still needs a lot of work.
Well, Apple isn't buying NVIDIA. Apple is going with Broadcom, as you know. The top buyer of NVIDIA chips is Microsoft. Number two is either Amazon or Meta, and then the number three is one or the other. And so those are the top three buyers. And Amazon is having building its own training chip in house now. They're kind of doubling down on that. So I think they're going to really slow down buying NVIDIA chips. Microsoft is having some cash issues. I think they're going to slow down buying as well. There's also a recent news that came out last week or the week before that they delayed phase 2 build out of a AI data center. And they note in the statement that they're going to, consider recent technology developments, etc. And then on top of that, I think Jensen said before that other verticals will, make up for any demand growth slowdown from these mega scalers and hyperscalers. And I just don't think that's true. I don't think we're going to see Saudi Arabia buying as many GPUs as Microsoft, or if the US government starts doing something similar, I think that's going to take many years to pass through Congress or build out, etc. And that all assumes that electricity growth is going to be that electricity is going to be available. That cheap electricity, and we're seeing some of these nuclear power plant projects. They're talking 5-10 years out. So there's a lot of challenges ahead of Nvidia. Not to mention the export regulation now too. And then on top of that, on the demand side, I just don't think the AI adoption is going to happen as fast as people think. I think that there are a lot of people who've heard of ChatGPT. They may have used it once or twice, but they haven't really found a way to kind of increase their productivity in a material way using ChatGPT. I think software engineers maybe yes, but we're talking billions of people around the world that eventually will adopt this technology. But that's going to happen, I think, 10, 20 years down the line, not anytime soon. So the stock is priced as if it's going to happen in the next few years, and I just don't see it happening.
May I ask, what do you think if Trump makes a deal with China, allowing NVIDIA to sell chips again?
Yeah, I don't know. Regulatory bottlenecks is not really a huge part of, like, it's not a big pillar of my argument, but we've seen what DeepSeek has been able to do with new GPUs, replicating 4.0 and then oh 01. And so that tells me the superior performance of the high end, where NVIDIA is charging 70-80% margins, is not necessary. So yeah, I don't know. I think one of the biggest applications of AI in terms of productivity increase is going to be FSD, and we're not really seeing a huge rapid increase towards that milestone, progress towards that milestone right now. Despite what all the the videos we see, I think are very impressive. But the fact is, FSD still goes a couple hundred miles between critical disengagements, and you can't really take your eyes off the road. So where is the productivity increase? That's not going to happen until tens of thousands of miles, hundreds of thousands of miles between critical disengagements, and even when you reach that milestone, it's going to take a long time, several years, if not 5-10+ years, for it to kind of make its way into mass use, in mass adoption. So I mean, today I'm not seeing even Uber drivers use FSD. So if they're not finding value, despite driving 300 miles a day, thousands of miles a month, if they're not finding value in paying $99 a month for this software, I wouldn't expect an average driver to use it. So ChatGPT has tens of millions of paid users, but they're losing money on $200 a month, even, which obviously, if you're not making money building this technology, then how are you going to reinvest into future development, future growth? With higher rates now, you're not going to be able to raise the money that you used to be able to raise a few years ago. So I think this catch 2022 is starting to catch up to AI hype. And yeah, I mean, NVIDIA hasn't returned anything since June 18. It's been flat, up and down and flat. So I think the bubble is about to pop. And on a final note on NVIDIA is like, the US equity market is by far the highest valued equity market in the world right now. China, Europe, many other parts of the world are really struggling, and they're going downhill. And they're gonna pull down the U.S. at some point. It's just a matter of time. And the transition mechanism is going to be the strong U.S. dollar. And so, um, in the highest valued equity market, which is also, by the way, not just from a comps analysis, but also from a historical perspective, it's the highest. Like, I think in some way, today's market is even higher valued than the 1999 tech bubble, dot-com bubble. So in that market, the highest hyped industry is semiconductors, and Nvidia is the most overvalued among all of those. So, yeah, I don't know how this, but on the other hand, like, to kind of argue the other side, it's like, Wes is a Nvidia shareholder. He's not selling any of his shares. I know a couple of people, like Gavin Baker, is very optimistic about Nvidia's future. Although Gavin he gave me a couple of replies that's just a little puzzling in terms of FSD performance.
But yeah, I'm sorry to
A few,
interrupt you. That's very
a few,
strange arguments
a few
because, like,
weeks,
I
a
always
few
thought
weeks ago, and then also Loop Ventures Gene Munster is also very positive on Nvidia too. So there's a lot of positive people on the bull side of this. Very
the
smart
Yaman, I
people.
always thought the main argument in NVIDIA would be that the GPUs would get better. Not that these other arguments, I don't get it because, a lot of things can change. Interest rates could go down and so forth. But the fundamental thing that people are really putting money in for was that the Moore's Law would still apply even to GPUs right now. I always thought that was the main argument for why the stock is going up. Am I missing that or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that GPUs and the computing in general will continue to become cheaper and more efficient. It's just, I guess, the disagreement is how fast that will lead to useful AI adoption across the world, which obviously is necessary for further growth in demand for NVIDIA's GPUs. And then also the second pillar is, will others be able to produce similar, maybe slightly worse GPUs that are a lot more cost efficient? So that's another thing. So I agree with you on what you just said. I think GPUs and computing AI will play very major roles in decades to come. But maybe we disagree on the timing of it.
I think the main disagreement is on the price. So you're looking at forward earnings and you believe that, the stock is not correctly priced. But then the question becomes, if it's worth way more than it should be today, would Warren Buffett get into it? I mean, my point here is, at what point does it stop becoming a growth stock? Your argument is it's no longer a real growth stock. There's a lot of momentum and hype. And when the hype dies down, the price collapses. But that's a different issue altogether. I don't think you're talking about timing. You're talking about the price of it. I think price, though, the hype issue is something that's really weird. I don't know if hype dies down within about a year and a half of its hitting all-time high. It would take years for the hype to go away.
No, I think hype has already started coming down as a stock. But look, I think there's let's go to West, but I think there's some realities here that are in electricity generation is one. The reality of Microsoft having to choose between, do you buy back your stock? Do you continue to buy more GPUs? Do you divert some spending to other GPU makers? There's that reality too. Like TSMC can produce this, should continue to produce NVIDIA chips. NVIDIA can continue to design better and better GPUs, but the buyers have their own limits as well. So, Wes.
Hey, Yaman, I just want to let you know I need to drop right now, but I'll come back in about 5-10 minutes. Just FYI.
Okay, sounds good.
Uh,
ACDC, Jimmy, what do you think?
So I do hear I hear your points, and when we see stocks like this, it's when you look at the analysts who try to say, okay, right now it's overhyped, the price will eventually go down. One of the things you have to look into is this: its forward earnings are based on inventory that it doesn't have. And the question is, at what point will there be an oversupply to the market? I haven't heard that in your argument. You said there will be more efficient and cheaper alternatives. Question, when? I know that there are many alternatives coming out in the market, but at scale, to replace that gap so that NVIDIA does face that hurdle where now it's basically building stuff and oversupplying the market, turning it into a commodity. From my understanding of companies, they always want the best if they can afford it, and they want to establish those relationships long term. If they have to buy things that cost more, it means it's not a commodity. I don't know when GPUs were a commodity, to be honest. I mean, if you look at the history of GPUs in the last 30 years, yeah, sure, NVIDIA GPUs were being slept on because mostly gamers used it. But now I don't know how AI turns into GPUs just becoming commodity, since it's a race for everyone to get AGI. So the real question should be, if AGI is achieved, then it becomes a commodity. I would accept that argument. But don't you think there's a race? And if there is a race, those big companies with huge cash flow will want to win that race. And therefore, if NVIDIA, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is back in May of 2024. Microsoft held its annual conference for developers, and in an analyst briefing ahead of the conference, Scott Guthrie, Microsoft's executive VP of the Microsoft Cloud and AI Group, described AMD's MI300X accelerator as the most cost-effective GPU out there right now for Azure OpenAI. So, something can be a little worse than the best, but if it costs, half the price, then it may make sense for Microsoft and others to go with that option instead. But like my argument, primary argument isn't about AMD is producing better GPUs than NVIDIA. I think NVIDIA will probably continue to produce the best and the greatest. But this was true back for Tesla, say in 2022, when Tesla was charging $70,000 for a Model Y. Today, still Model Y is the best-selling EV. That hasn't changed. But in 2022, the stock went down by 2/3. And that's because the overall market growth rate slowed down substantially. And I see that happening with GPU market as well. I think the overall market growth rate will slow down, and NVIDIA will continue to be the best, but I think the stock price is way out there.
All right.
You could have made the same argument back in 2022 with Tesla. You could have made the argument that EVs are the future, that EVs will continue to grow, and you would be correct. But you would have held through the stock price, more than having. So
Yeah, that seems very hindsight. You just never know about timing. Timing is the hardest thing to get in the world, no matter what.
yeah, you're right. You're right, but I also don't really like that. That's not enough for me to stop trying. And yeah,
timing is a lot easier when you're Warren Buffett or D.E. Shaw, because they control so many stocks that they can have one stock help the other stock and both go up. But as regular people, I know there are traders who are out there on their own, not at Jump, not at Jane Street, who do try to do timing. But to do timing on NVIDIA seems to be an ocean of difference between, let's say, doing timing on like an automobile stock. I mean, because of the hype issue. So you're judging hype, you say, well, it's going to die down, therefore it's going to lead to this. I would just say at that point, maybe we should establish a prediction market around AMD stock and say, well, they're going to release this new GPU, which will be 80% as good as the NVIDIA GPUs. Then that would be fine. But if AMD does that, I don't know if NVIDIA stock goes down. That's not, yeah, I think we all know that. Anyway.
I mean, are you telling me that hype on NVIDIA stock is still very high versus 6 months ago, a year ago?
It could always get higher. You never know. And I don't want to be
Well,
that
are
guy who
you
said,
saying
like,
it's
let me
the
give you
same right
5
now?
examples of how. I think it could.
No, I think the hype has already come down quite a bit on Nvidia stock, as opposed to like I think Tesla stock is a lot hype right now versus 6 months ago, a year ago. But I think Nvidia stock's hype is lower today than it was 6 months ago.
We never really know. Something seems to always show up out of nowhere, and one must admit the Nvidia stock exploded almost out of nowhere for a lot of people.
Okay. Are you an Nvidia investor?
I am, but that's different. I never did options on Nvidia.
So you are holding Nvidia today, right?
I have to. If you own any of these ETFs, you have Nvidia in it. Um, you know, there are stocks I hold individually for sure, which are not like Nvidia whatsoever, where I have a much stronger belief on timing. But anyone who holds any ETF right now in tech, you're going to have a lot of Nvidia in it. So
I mean, Nvidia is the biggest company today. They passed Apple today after Apple's 4% drop and 16% drop in the last month. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it's some like I'm betting against the company, and I see all these smart people like yourself, Gene Munster, Gavin Baker, and a bunch of others who are holding Nvidia. I'm very adamant about, and Wes, very adamant about Nvidia. But it's like, if I'm going to make an
if you could
investment,
tell me your strike price, then we could talk.
I'm not going to tell you how I'm shorting Nvidia. There are millions of ways you can bet against the company, and I change it every now and then. So that's not the point of this conversation. The point of the conversation is what is the fundamental value of Nvidia today and in the future? And I think the market is overestimating it. ACDC, what do you think?
So I agree with many of your points, and the way I look at it myself is that AI has become, like we said, such a hype where people are just chasing it without it really proving itself, right? Which company, show me any company that is deriving significant revenue to their bottom line using AI. There aren't any. There are some companies that are using it on the back end to improve efficiencies. And that's where I see AI actually improving and expanding more. Okay. So stuff like agentic AI, which does not utilize a lot of compute power as some of these other models, LLM models, FSD models, and stuff, can be implemented with much less compute and offer a lot more efficiency. You can have an agentic AI model placed into a company and it can replace 10 workers at $50,000 per worker cost per year. That's significant efficiency. And that model, that is something that does specific tasks and not endless tasks full of edge cases and everything. So that's why I agree that all this compute that everybody raced for, all the GPU power and everything was overbuilt, overdone, and with competitors coming in and them realizing it, like, okay, do we really need this? What has this got us to the bottom line? It's going to take a breather. And that for that reason, I think definitely Nvidia is overpriced. And also, like you said, you and Jimmy were kind of talking about the hype. I call it momentum. Nvidia is no longer a momentum stock. It's not the stock that traders are trading. In fact, Tesla is still a momentum stock, and a lot of traders are trading it. As you can see today, the market goes back up, and Nvidia and Tesla is almost positive maybe now for that reason. So there aren't a lot of things that are kind of like working for it, or I do really coming up that could really sway the stock upwards.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I think the market is obviously rallying from the low inflation figures. Jimmy, do you have any updated thoughts on inflation?
Well, I believe inflation is going to go up massively. Um, I've made that argument before, but I also don't believe inflation's real. So I also have a heterodox opinion on this. Inflation is different from price appreciation. price appreciation exists, but inflation in itself right now doesn't actually really exist. And people say, "What do you mean, Jimmy?" Well, I am arguing this because I got muted. I'm saying this because the population in the United States has increased massively. The price of things increase corresponding to the number of people who need those things. And so if you look at, things that you need, like eggs, it's gone up in price 2x since the 1990s. But almost twice as many people live in the United States now. I mean, we have 350 million people, probably more, actually, if you include the undocumented. So naturally prices go up. But then if you look at urban areas where again they figure into these inflation numbers, housing and things like that, people point out to the housing costs. Well, a lot of the urban areas where people left, houses are still very cheap. No one wants to live there though. But if you go to the places where people want to live, heavy urbanization has been a trend in the United States. 8 times the number of people live in certain states now compared to 30 years ago because of air conditioning, because of more jobs, because of all sorts of things. So those houses gone up a lot. So I don't really think inflation is real, but I do think that price appreciation will continue massively for the next 15 years.
Okay. So you gave up on your stagflation argument?
It is stagflation. I call it stag appreciation, though.
All right.
We're not Turkey. We're not. This is not the lira, guys. This is not a
What do
situation
you
where the
think
dollar.
about the strong U.S. dollar? Do you think these yields continue to remain below 5%, or do you think, like Tiro is calling for it, 6-7% yields?
Well, that would be very high. Is this an argument that interest rates stay the same?
Yeah, I think their primary argument is around budget deficits.
Right, but this is for the next year with no interest rate changes, according to Powell, for the next year. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly.
Okay, well, if there are no changes by the Fed in the next year, I don't think it'd be more than 6. But if there's a few more cuts, then it's likely will be more than 6. And I think that's very fair. There will be expectations that unless the deficit massively goes down, that this is going to lead to spiraling inflation.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think inflation is real in the United States. I mean, car prices are actually.
Yeah, this person, CIO of fixed income at T. Rowe, is saying highlights persistent U.S. fiscal challenges and inflationary pressures that may be exacerbated by the potential return of Trump-era policies. I don't see how the economy
He
can
seems kind of
sustain.
anti-Trump.
I
Not
don't
really
see how
sure
the
what he's
economy
trying
can
to say.
sustain a 6% yield. Honestly, I think even 5% kind of push things a little over the edge. ACDC, what do you think?
I think inflation is going to be very sticky this year, and any growth measures by the Trump administration will only make it worse. So that's going to be a very tough balancing act here for the Fed. And I think also what you're going to see, it's going to affect people in a very lopsided way. Okay, there's going to be growth, there will be wealth creation, but that'll be mostly on the mid to top side, whereas the lower side of the economy is still going to struggle with inflation as they are. So that's going to be something that the Fed can't ignore, and how it ends up tackling that is going to be the biggest challenge for it.
Okay. Wes, thank you for coming back. Sorry, I have a few questions for you. Does DeepSeek replicating O1 within a couple of months at a fraction of the cost? I honestly don't understand how that's positive for NVIDIA.
It shows that more people can replicate frontier model performance with relative ease, and it requires them to purchase or get access to quite a bit of inference compute.
But if it's so easy to replicate a frontier model at a fraction of the cost, even before a frontier model makes any money for these people, then why would anybody develop another frontier model at this point with tens of billions of dollars invested into NVIDIA GPUs?
It's just more demand for inference compute is my theory. It's going to generate a lot more demand because the more people that are in the game, the more widely you're going to have demand. So that's my thinking.
Okay, so let's see. Who would be next to buy NVIDIA inference compute, NVIDIA chips for inference at scale, at tens of billions of dollars of scale, like Microsoft?
Yeah, sure. These are companies that are going to rent these GPUs to other companies, other startups. So I think we're just going to see more startups occurring due to this latest kind of new company that has sprung up that's able to get frontier level performance because they're going to want to get a piece of the pie that OpenAI is. Generally they're the only ones that are kind of profiting from this, if you will, or generating revenue.
So you're saying a venture capital firm will finance a startup to replicate O1 performance, just like DeepSeek did, by using, uh, you know, using Microsoft Cloud. Is that it?
Yeah, or using a large cloud, from AWS or Google or whatever. But yes,
But
that's the idea.
now at that point, if it's AWS or Google Cloud, why wouldn't Google just produce more of its TPUs? Why wouldn't Amazon do it on Trainiums?
That stack is still largely not as mature as the NVIDIA stack. So when we talk about Trainium, we talk about using only NVIDIA's tools. And yeah, they offer a CUDA stack to train on, but that CUDA stack is not codeless. Like you still have to
Now
implement code
let me
changes.
also ask you. Let's say this venture. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just so passionate about this topic, and I really appreciate your opinion. You know that. So let's say the venture capital firm financed this startup, gave $1 billion to replicate O1 at a fraction. Let's say O1 costs ChatGPT 10 billion. I'm not sure how much it costs, right? But let's say it costs $1 billion and takes $100 million to replicate. And let's say this company was able to replicate O1 model. Why would a user, ChatGPT user, switch to this unknown, startup when I can use O1 at the same price? Like, they're not going to be making 10x better than what O1 is using DeepSeek's methodology. Is that not correct?
I think the reason is that without code changes, you can switch from OpenAI to DeepSeek very, very easily, and at like a really low fraction of the cost, because DeepSeek has been able to train their model and offer it up for a fraction of the price. So their cost is much lower. So that's the reason that you'd switch, because there's no code change. You can literally just prompt a different AI and then access the API. So the API level code is very easy. Like that's, just a few hours of coding that largely you could prompt the AI to code for you.
Okay. So your argument is that there's going to be thousands of companies that are doing what DeepSeek did, and for that they're going to need NVIDIA GPUs.
Yeah, the startup cost to compete with OpenAI has just gone down by like 1,000-fold with test time training. That's kind of like the simplest way to say it.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to think about that. Now, why does not apply to FSD also?
So FSD is a proprietary model architecture. So it's not using standard LLM transformers. So they have some amount of infrastructure and tools that are bespoke. They're unique. So to change those tools requires potentially more work because it's not open source and the community isn't participating. So this is why DeepSeek open sourced this stuff so everybody will use it. And then potentially they, like Hugging Face, they can make a company out of it. Did, like 4 or 5 years ago. So that's kind of the similar path that is occurring.
Okay. ACDC, what do you think about what Wes said?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I'm like I said, I agree with him that FSD I think is definitely being on the proprietary side is not going to be able to offer a replication as some of these other things, but I still don't understand, I guess, the compute part of it, that having DeepSeek, does it actually reduce the need for compute or not? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, so I think in the near term, it does, right? Especially because, I mean, we know DeepSeek was on NVIDIA H800s. So it's a dumbed down version of NVIDIA Hopper platform, because NVIDIA can't export H100s, H200s to China. And I think in the near term, it reduces the need for training compute, any sort of algorithmic breakthrough or architecture breakthrough or methodology that improves. I mean, Wes said 1,000x improvement. I thought it was more like 10x improvement. But in the near term, I think it's a negative for NVIDIA's demand. Maybe in the longer term, because these startups, the thousands of startups that we just discussed, they're not going to all flare up this year or next year, but maybe in the future, 5-10 years from now, I think it's positive for compute. By then, though, we just don't know if NVIDIA will still be in the lead, if AMD or others will have developed similar GPUs, or if the companies have developed, if Google has developed another version of its TPU that it can rent out through Google Cloud at a much cheaper and more effective, um, you know, cost-effective price than Microsoft is doing with Microsoft Cloud. So I think the long-term benefits are definitely there, but the competitive landscape is just harder to forecast as opposed to near term. I think this is a definite negative. Very similar to this whole EV credit going away discussion that's happening on X right now. There's no question $7,500 going away is a negative in the near term for Tesla. In the longer term, to the extent that it leads to Tesla grabbing more of the market share, assuming EVs continue to grow at that rapid pace, then it may be positive for Tesla. But I think it's a very similar parallel. Wes?
So maybe I'll say why I think the EV credit is a positive for Tesla, because it's very similar, and I agree. Is that once that goes away, you're going to see the other EV automakers in America and potentially everywhere except China stop either selling their cars in the US or bringing them here or planning to, or battery plants, like all of that stuff starts to go away because they can't sell their vehicles, and they can compete less with Tesla now. So they're literally going to make $7,500 less profit or lose $7,500 more. So in 2024, I was just listening to a podcast about this. The top 15 EV sellers equal Tesla in 2024 for the amount of EVs sold. So let's just assume in 2025, like a lot of that starts to go away because they'll just stop selling their cars. Like that allows people to go, hey, like maybe I should consider a Tesla now because these other ones aren't being sold. And I can see Tesla dropping their price to compensate.
I agree with you if the discussion only relates to Ford, GM, Stellantis in the US. I agree with you, but you're excluding BYD. BYD does not depend on $7,500 credit in the US. Despite not qualifying for it, they have outpaced Tesla's growth both on pure EVs as well as total vehicles. And on top of that, you're also excluding competition from hybrid from your competitive analysis. So, like I said, I don't expect AMD to produce any sort of GPUs that are better than NVIDIA, but I think the overall market growth rate is going to slow down very substantially here. due to various limitations that I just don't think they are under in NVIDIA's control. So ACDC.
So I agree that it's on the short term, definitely it's going to be a negative for Tesla. But even on the long term, where I want to believe that it'll be a positive, my fear is that if EV adoption all of a sudden goes down, which is what would happen, right? You have all of these other manufacturers literally just fold up and go away. Does that really help the overall EV market or the perception of it, right? Tesla will by no doubt still exist, but without these credits, Tesla existed as a niche in a niche market. Will So I think that will still be the case, and they could. But being in a mass market, I'm not sure if that really happens because it's a very negative not just a connotation, but and a perception. But you literally just see like, hey, these EVs came around and then they went by the wayside because everybody just folded. So will people still continue to go to EVs as strongly as they did? So I'm not sure even on a long term is completely
Right.
positive.
Right. Yeah, I mean, hybrids have surprised me. I would never buy a hybrid. ACDC, I think that you should buy a Tesla again. If I ever bought a car, it would be a Tesla. But um, but that's not how the mass market thinks. Um, um, yeah, I was gonna say something to Wes, but I forget.
Yeah, man. Can I just share something? A little anecdotal experience of mine last night. So I gathered with about 7 of my neighbors to watch the football game last night, and we literally talked about cars most of the time. It's like everybody, like I think 5 people bought new cars almost, right? And there was nobody who bought an EV except for one guy, and that guy is the guy who's selling his Model S and buying the new Cadillac IQ that's coming out. So he placed an order for it. And apart from that, nobody else bought it. Majority of them bought a Kia Telluride, a Honda Pilot, and the one other guy, he bought the Volvo XC90 hybrid plug-in. Okay, so that's really kind of, and these people are mostly like around $500,000 income earners, and they can literally buy, and they have the luxury of home charging and everything. But the narrative, the dialogue has really changed, and I don't see people talking about EVs as they did before.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be apparent. There's a demand issue. Tesla's facing a very tough demand issue right now, and I think when Troy publishes his first estimate for Q1, people will talk about it a little bit more. But Wes, we had discussed in previous spaces that Tesla will need to spend tens of billions of dollars to perfect FSD to the reliability level necessary for robotaxis, buying GPUs, developing its own Dojo platform, building additional data centers, hiring, training, paying R&D engineers, and it's going to take years to do to perfect FSD2 for robotaxi level. I think you had estimated maybe in the low tens of billions of dollars range. I had estimated in the high tens of billions of dollars range. Either way, if Tesla is not generating billions of dollars in free cash flow per year, how will Tesla finance the capex necessary to perfect FSD and Optimus?
Yeah, that would be difficult if they're not generating profit. I agree. They would have to raise money somehow, but I don't see that happening. But I can see why you might.
Yeah. So you believe that Tesla will continue to generate billions of dollars. I guess, do you have any profit expectations for 2025?
I really need to see when that tax break goes away. I don't think that tax break is going to go away for a while. But producer credit, if that remains or goes away, and the lithium refining credit, if that stays or goes away, that type of thing. Those are all kind of big unknowns. And then regulatory credits, if that stays or goes away, that's a big contributor. So lots of big unknowns right now.
But the thing is, they all apply to the US market. And Tesla is facing headwinds that are far more important, I think, than the EV tax credit going away, for which really doesn't really apply to most people. An average Tesla owner today makes more than $150,000, is in his 50s, is male and white. That's the most common Tesla owner. And the income limitations alone, let alone the Model S, Model X Cybertruck prices, is a limiting factor for how many of these cars apply for. And then when you look at it from a global perspective, we're talking maybe like 10% of sales. But the rest of the world, Tesla is facing really intense competition from Chinese automakers, like BYD, but others as well, and also regulatory headwinds from European governments and the Chinese government as well, protecting their own. So the question again is, how will Tesla, even if you assume the $7,500 credit stays here, how will Tesla generate the tens of billions of dollars? Let's go to Jimmy. Jimmy, what do you think?
I think they'll just have to continue selling more cars. I don't think there's any way around it. But I do believe in Tesla Energy. I think that's going to be a big deal. Maybe Trump pushes Elon into focusing more on our energy grid. We definitely need to upgrade that. I don't see a situation where we're not going to get a stimulus at some point. You may lie, oh, federal deficits are bad. Well, if you actually look at the history, our deficit is not actually much higher versus GDP compared to the 1980s. In absolute numbers, yes, it's gone up. That is for sure. But in terms of deficit versus GDP, same as the 1980s. And I could see a situation where we actually spend money on our infrastructure. Donald Trump reminds me of a very traditional Republican. He wants to protect American interests through tariffs and use infrastructure. Infrastructure like Eisenhower, building highways like McKinley, ports, Theodore Roosevelt. We want to focus on this infrastructure. Who would do that best? Elon Musk as the infrastructure czar. And I believe that energy storage is going to be one of those big deals. I mean, we can't really do anything without upgrading our energy grids across the United States. And that would mean Tesla Energy being one of the big vendors for that.
Okay. So Jimmy says maybe vehicles will be, limited, vehicle profitability will be limited across the world in the coming year or two, but Tesla Energy sales in the US will probably accelerate as Elon removes some of these bottlenecks on the regulatory front with his, relationship with Trump. ACDC, what do you think?
Yeah, so I agree with half the statement that Jimmy made, that Trump is definitely going to focus on that. His statement when he says drill, baby, drill, it's not just about oil, it's about oil and energy. And energy includes a lot of natural gas that we're going to definitely get into more, okay, and expand the production of that more. But where I lose Jimmy is that, Jimmy, if the energy grid is stabilized further and production is increased further, how does Megapack implementation come into the picture? Where is that needed? Can you help me fit that in the puzzle?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Look, right now, Tesla has agreed to supply, PV and energy stores, right, across the United States for private developers. But containerized battery energy storage, it's something that's just beginning. So, for example, you're talking about deploying it for projects in California, Texas, the country's two leading energy storage markets. But also, don't forget, Intersect Power, for example, recently ordered a 2.4 gigawatt system from Tesla. Imagine the federal government starts ordering it. We could see a number of those. And to give you an idea of the scale for it, Tesla 2023, its shipments total 14.7 gigawatts. And the company's Megapack factory in Cali is scheduled to ramp up to 40 gigawatts by the end of 2025, I guess, something like that. That's more than half the 15.3 gigawatts ordered utilized for projects in California and Texas. Okay, by the end of 2027. So, okay, when we built the highways, remember under Eisenhower, people wondered would be able to get it done. Would the highways really mean anything? Yeah, we need new infrastructure. We needed to connect cities together. We already used trains from the 1890s for sure. But what Eisenhower was able to do within 6 years to get all those highways connected together was pretty amazing. Right now, there are areas of the United States that are experiencing high energy bills, brownouts. As you know, you have to buy the stuff from the utility company and those types of situations where you're only able to get certain space during the day, and then those utility companies are losing that space. You have a lot of companies who are just mining Bitcoin, for example, and buying it, and then the costs are handed over to the consumer because when they're taking it from that space in the utility company, it's an allocated space for like a residential district, and a Bitcoin mining company could just pay more for that. I mean, we just don't have the storage, we just don't have the capacity, and that's how do we become a high tech infrastructure manufacturing country? That's is a tough thing, but there are bigger deals than just this. There's a lot of stuff coming out with nuclear energy. So you say nuclear energy. How do we make sure nuclear energy actually means anything in the United States? It's through energy storage. And that's what the Chinese are doing. The Chinese built a lot of nuclear energy in the last 15 years. I mean, it went from 0 to 30, and they're not the only ones, but certainly the biggest one. And that is, they had brownouts back in the day, guys. They had massive brownouts, and now they have energy storage through things like megapacks. But they're not as good, not as big. In the United States, oh man, our infrastructure is so backward. It's just so bad, and we really need to fix that. We really, really need to fix that.
Okay. ACDC, do you agree with Jimmy that Tesla will generate billions of dollars in Megapack sales in 2025 and 2026?
I don't. Thanks for
You
explaining
don't?
it, Jimmy. But I don't.
I think that's
I'm,
a layup. I think that's a layup. I think Tesla will generate billions of dollars in operating profits, both in 2025 and 2026 from Megapacks. I mean, what kind of assumptions do you have to use? Like, we're talking 40 gigawatt hours in the US alone, and they're going to ramp Shanghai throughout 2025. So in 2026, they're going to have both all on, say, 80 gigawatt hours, 80 gigawatt hours per year. Let's say they make about 100 per kilowatt hour in profit. I mean, I think the China profits will probably be lower than US margins, just like in automotive. I mean, I don't think it's going to be very difficult for CATL and others or BYD to replicate what Tesla is doing with Megapacks in China. So the profits may be limited to the US. But I think in those 2 years, Tesla will generate more than $5 billion in operating profits from Megapack combined. So 2 years combined, more than $5 billion. Jimmy, do you have any estimates on Megapack profitability?
Yeah, I see a 15% margin at least.
In China?
No, I thought you were referring to the what I was talking about before, federal. In China, it's a possibility. We're gonna have to see. There's a lot of competition though in that space. But if federal government does buy megapacks, it's usually a 50% margin that is very fair.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you $5-10 billion of gross profits, and when you drop it down to net profits with taxes and everything, you're looking at maybe $5 billion. So, but we said Tesla needs tens of billions of dollars to be invested into data centers or AI data centers to develop to perfect FSD. So where's the rest of the money coming from?
Oh, I don't know. Wes, go ahead.
Do you think Tesla will issue equity, raise debt, or use its current cash balance for the rest of it?
I would say they'd probably issue debt. I mean, they could probably get pretty good fair value on the debt market right now. Max 3.5%, 4%. That's what a lot of companies are getting. Walgreens got its debt at 4%. God knows how.
I mean, those are probably backed by assets. I don't think Elon's going to collateralize gigafactories. Is that what you're thinking?
Wait, why wouldn't he collateralize Tesla assets to get debt?
Well, he hasn't done that in the past. I think my understanding of why, I mean, he's never said why, but my understanding of why is that these are very essentially just don't want to I take that risk on. I don't know. He's very conservative when it comes to balance sheet management, as you know.
That's true, but I mean, infrastructure and R&D spending of that scale would need debt, and I think the debt market would probably support it. I think that even Apple raises debt for stuff. I mean, Apple raises debt every quarter, guys.
Tesla has $33.6 billion in cash equivalents, and investments on its balance sheet as of September 30th. We had a similar conversation here before. You know, if you deduct some of these current liabilities and add in inventory, and then take out the minimum required cash to run global operations, you're looking at maybe about $10 billion of excess cash here. So let's say Tesla generated $5-10 billion selling mega packs in the next couple of years, and has about $10 billion of excess cash. That's $20 billion. So that would, I guess, be enough for Wes's estimate of what Tesla needs to perfect FSD and develop Optimus. But my estimate is more in the higher tens of billions of dollars range. Wes, do you have any thoughts on the topic?
No, I mean you're saying how I think. I mean that's what I think. I think they have enough money, have enough time. So that's right.
All right. All right. I'm going to look into how does test time, what DeepSeek showed. Wes, were you able to read the paper that DeepSeek published?
I scanned it. I had the AI scan it. I didn't read it fully. I did watch Matthew Berman's video about it, where he goes into it more deeply, and then I followed along with him, and it did pick out the AI picked out the kind of same things that he picked out. But the video is really good for people to follow. He's been making wonderful, wonderful videos. So I would strongly recommend watching that and having the PDF open in front of you. He's got a link to the PDF in the description, and he makes it very easy to follow. So I would suggest that for folks.
Okay, Matthew Berman has a YouTube channel. Is this open source Q-Star, the first open thinking model, or is this something else, another title?
No, it's literally it's called DeepSeek. I think DeepSeek R1.
Yeah,
He did it just a couple days ago.
DeepSeek R1, beginning of a new era.
There you go. That's it. That's the one.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it right now. And now
Awesome.
we can have a discussion again next time. And I really want to understand what DeepSeek, because my thesis is that what DeepSeek showed reduces demand growth for NVIDIA. Wes says that it increases demand for NVIDIA's, especially on the inference front. And then we'll reconvene next time. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to those who contributed, ACDC, Jimmy, and Wes. I highly appreciate it. And I'll chat with you guys next time. Take care.